Success in Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
When it comes to government, the first casualty is always the truth. It doesn't matter what country you're in, what continent you're on, or who the mouthpiece du jour is. The truth always suffers. And don't believe any statistic they tell you because it's always a lie. Right, Andy?
Absolutely. I've made a career and a life out of exposing these things.
Yeah, you just can't believe them because they're always lying to you because you can't handle the truth. And even if you can handle it, they don't want to tell you the truth because eventually it's going to cost them their jobs, right?
Of course. And that's it. You could be talking about the States, of course, which has the most to lose, or you can be talking about China, which is supposedly the world's growth engine, but it's really not. Not the current China. The future China will be the world's growth engine. Right now, it's going to be the one that needs to feed 1.3 billion people when the whole currency regime collapses.
Well, they'll just send them out to McDonald's with a EBT card, a Chinese EBT card. You know what? I'm telling you this now. The Chinese EBT card is coming. I don't care that they have no safety net or anything. They cannot afford to have a third of the population on the streets of China starving. They will have a revolution because the people are not going to put up with it. You know it and I know it, right?
That's right. And they're not all farmers anymore. The whole world has forgotten how to farm, which is why you're seeing, between that and population growth, it's why you're seeing surging commodity prices for the items that we need to live on in life, such as food.
Yeah, little things. And right now, nonetheless, with everything that's happened in the United States, percentage of income spent on food, and let's not talk about going out to restaurants like we all do, is under 10% in the United States, lower than any country in the world. That is going to change. It's going to go up way, way, way higher than that. None of you are prepared for it. Going to happen. But what's going to happen in China is the advent of the EBT card, and that is going to be the headline of this segment as the real estate bubble blows up in China, which you're going to talk about, as the export bubble blows up in China and everything else blows up in China. You are going to see the advent of the communist EBT card in China. I guarantee you that.
Right, which will be devalued just like food stamps here. And, to your point, the reason we had this supposed Arab Spring, or I should say why Arab Spring started in Arab nations, is because they are the ones that spend the most of their food, the most of their money on food. In fact, Egypt, they spend 45% of their income on food. India, it's 35%. Indonesia, 30%. Brazil, 25%. Turkey, 20%. These are all the countries where you're seeing the currencies collapse the quickest. And the U.S. is down around 5 or 6%, but that number is going to be much higher in the coming years now that food prices are surging, especially if this drought in the western half of the nation continues. And as for China, again, they have all the jobs, they have all the manufacturing capacity, but they just have too many people. And ultimately, if they're going to try to prevent near-term social unrest, they're going to go all out. I mean, they're already communists. So they might as well go socialist as well.
Yeah, they have to do it, Andy, because, they got overcapacity. They've way over invested in the capital sector. And Peter Schiff keeps saying, the Chinese are going to become consumers. And they're just not going to stop saving because they don't trust their government. They don't trust the future. This absurdity of Chinese spending 70% of their income of GDP on buying the junk that they're producing that we're buying now ain't going to happen. And the end result is going to be these factories will shut down and they're going to be handing out the EBT cards. There's no other way.
It's always comical when they talk about China. Well, it's growing so fast. Yeah, it's growing off of a very, very small base. So everything looks like large growth. But the fact is, on a per capita basis, the Chinese people still have the least amount of savings of pretty much anyone. I mean, maybe India and some other poor nations do. But you do have a bunch of billionaires there. And it's also a very tiered society where most people don't have much. And what the Chinese government has done, again, people like to say, oh, they're brilliant, the Chinese government, but they're not. They're just a bunch of communists, a small group of people that have made some horrible policies. I mean, they were smart enough to lure jobs, but at the same time, they fostered the most incredible credit creation in history. I mean, what they have done money printing wise pales what has been done in the Western world. As I noted last week, they printed 3 times more money in January than the Bank of Japan and the Fed combined. And if you go back to 2008, again, the shadow banking industry, which is, where they allow all these non-bank entities to borrow, to lend money, have lent $14 trillion since 2008, since the whole global financial crisis. And as a result, today's article that I wrote is called the most terrifying article I've ever read. It's about the collapse of the Chinese real estate bubble. I mean, I don't think anyone can understand exactly how big it is. I was there last summer, and I saw the thousands of buildings being put up. But if you see the statistics, it's even more incredible about how much debt has been created, how much vacancy there is, how much percentage of the savings of the people have been put in these speculative real estate businesses. And now prices are rolling over. Now you're seeing defaults. The government is finally allowing these shadow banking industries to default. And the government is even now allowing the yuan to collapse, even though the entire world has bet that it's going to go higher. So I think that what is about to come from China is going to be something people can't even imagine, much less the citizens of China themselves.
Yeah, and they laugh at us, and rightfully so, but, they really don't know what they're in for, and the world doesn't. And did you see what was happening with Dr. Copper today? Copper was getting obliterated today.
That's right. Not just copper, but iron ore. The commodities that are most heavily levered to the Chinese construction boom. And again, building ghost cities, building things that have absolutely no purpose in the world. Copper, iron ore, those are the two that symbolize it more than anything. And they are, literally in free fall. Copper's down 10% in the last month. Iron ore is down 25% in the last month. Iron ore is down more like 35 or 40% in the last year or two. And so, when you talk about the end of something that's historic, I don't think that the world has ever seen anything like the crash that we're about to see in Chinese real estate. And the impact on the entire world. Again, they announced today an 18% year-over-year decline in exports to Chinese. That is just incredible, including over 20% to the BRICS. So it's the entire world that's feeling the pain of this. In fact, they actually announced a trade deficit for the first time in who knows how many years. So do you think that they're going to be buying any more treasury bonds? No. This is going to be global, and this is going to be, you think Ukraine is a big deal? Wait till you see the impact of this Chinese construction and real estate collapse.
Yeah, it's just going to be a sight to behold. And really, there's nothing new about this. They're basically like the United States in 1929 when you get down to it, right?
I think it's more like the United States in 2000, or I should say, forget the United States. It's more like the internet sector in 2000. Based on absolutely nothing. People in Beijing and the surrounding cities have put money into real estate at valuations of the worst internet stocks at their highest prices. And now the structure beneath that market, it's like March 2000, is just being pulled right out from underneath it.
Wow. Hey, so then we get to another of your favorite Far Eastern countries. We're looking at Japan, and they had a nice little trade deficit too.
Yeah, Japan is truly the land of the setting sun, and it is I wrote this morning that of all the things going on in the world, it's amazing now that it looks like, to me, the leader, the potentially leading cause of what causes everything to crash is now going to be the East, not the West. Because between what's going on in China and Japan, it's inevitable that some kind of horrible event comes on. I think Japan is odds on the favorite to be the first world nation of our time to hit hyperinflation. I mean, again, we're a year into Abenomics. This is a 2-year plan to double the money supply after doubling and tripling it for several years before that. They just announced today that not only was GDP in the fourth quarter only 0.1%, but they announced a $15 billion trade deficit for January, their biggest ever. And if you look at the chart, which is in my piece, I mean, it's literally straight down. I mean, this is the impact of Abenomics. They just announced their highest CPI in 5 years. Remember, Japan is already the most expensive city in the world to live in. And on top of that, you have the sales tax increasing in 3 weeks' time from 5% to 8%. And then next year, it's going to go to 10%. And that's just as Abenomics is finishing up. So I think that the Bank of Japan is going to double up on Abenomics. And I think that something catastrophic is going to happen in that financial realm.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Definition of insanity is being proven to us over and over again. Hey, then unemployment report, NFP report, and we go back to gold and silver getting slammed on the eve of that report as well.
Mm-hmm. And just to bring up one more thing about Japan, again, I've said it a million times in like my article, Demographic Hell, etc. They are the oldest country in the world by far, and they're about 10 years older than the United States, the population on average. That's why everything they did happened 10 years before us. Their market crash was in 1989, ours was in 1999, etc. So everything that you see there going on now is what will be going on here. That is, if we could survive that long. So keep that in mind. And as for the
if.
What's that?
Big if.
Yeah,
big if.
Big if. And as for the NFP report, I mean, how much more can we say? I mean, every single piece of data in the past month or two has been as bad as possible. Every employment data. In fact, on Wednesday, the ISM non-manufacturing index had its lowest reading in 4 years. The employment component was so bad it was actually predicting a negative job payroll for this month. And then, of course, also Wednesday, you had the ADP report, which was an utter misery. And then, of course, on Friday, they put out their plus 175 because they were terrified of gold and silver taking off between the Ukraine and the collapsing economy. So they just, 175 versus 152 estimate is hardly a big beat, especially when you see the underlying numbers are as bad as usual. All the jobs were in retail, and they were over 55 years old and minimum wage. And obviously they lied about the unemployment rate because there's no way that it can be going up when all these people are leaving the labor force. But the fact is they've attacked gold and silver all week to try to calm them down. And here we are on Monday. Gold is higher than it was a week ago. Silver is about the same as it was a week ago. And now the Ukrainian crisis is indeed getting worse. This whole thing in China is just starting to explode on the world. And, if you sit here holding your coins, you're protected. Otherwise, you're exposed to waking up on any given day and having any of these things we talk about, destroy everything.
Amazing. And yet there are still so many people, Andy, that have their heads in the sand. I mean, at what point do you wake up one day and say, this thing doesn't really look too good? Maybe you need to go take some defensive measures. Maybe you need to buy some gold. Maybe you need to buy some silver. Maybe stocking up on a little 9mm insurance protection wouldn't be a bad idea.
Or heck, some food, anything, just anything to consider that perhaps there is not a recovery, that perhaps the money printing cannot get better. In fact, I saw an article today that says global debt just passed $100 trillion.
I saw that. Yeah.
Including $30 trillion since 2007. And of course, we know the numbers are a lot higher. The U.S. alone has $5 trillion off-balance sheet debt, plus it has its unfunded liabilities, and who knows what else that they don't count. But we're talking about a Ponzi scheme that can only grow larger. 5 years from now, again, big if the system is still standing, that $100 trillion will be $150 trillion or $200 trillion, because that's how things mushroom at the end. And again, at some point, everyone is going to want to get on board with protecting themselves, and it will be too late. there's just not enough of these things out there, from guns to food to gold.
Yeah, and you see the ammunition shortages. They haven't gone away. They're getting worse. And you can count on it that everything is going to be that way. What are the majority of people going to do when it all really hits the fan, Andy?
They're going to suffer as they are I mean, all you have to do is look around the world. I mean, look what's going on in Egypt. Look what's going on in Turkey, in Argentina, in Brazil, in Venezuela, in Thailand, in Ukraine. That's what's going to happen to the majority of people. And what can you do? I mean, all we could do is try to get a few people on board to protect themselves, but the majority, as history tells us, will not.
Hey, one other thing I wanted to talk about is retail stores imploding in the United States. They keep talking about retail sales, but when they measure retail sales, it's only a measurement of stores that have been around for a year or longer. And the fact is, the number of retail stores is declining. And in fact, I read an article, one of our friends out there's over 1 billion feet of retail space that's empty at this moment. I mean, have you noticed that?
Well, I mean, for one, you have the secular change where people just don't go to the stores anymore. They shop online, and that destroys the commercial real estate industry, and it kills tons and tons of jobs. It may be more efficient, but again, it's, what I just said, a lot of people are losing a lot of money that way. And then, of course, you have the bad economy, which is killing retail demand as it is. And, we're talking about how people like to blame the weather for retail sales the last month or two, but the fact is online sales are down even more than in-store sales. So yes, there are some retailers that have been rendered obsolete, like Radio Shack, but across the board, and JCPenney, but across the board, you're seeing store closures. I see Staples just announced they're closing hundreds of stores. So it's everywhere that you're seeing this. And so again, if we talk about the lies in government. I mean, to say that jobs are increasing is just absolutely ridiculous. There's so many so many layoffs being announced every day across the board.
Yeah, and Staples closing stores, and Macy's, and now there's even talk that Walmart is going to be closing stores, and that would be a huge killer, because whatever confidence is left in retail, to see Walmart closing stores, I mean, forget it. That's the largest retailer in the world. And
well, that's why the Fed cannot let interest rates rise, because if they do, then you have the inflation that comes back here, and then the Walmart doesn't have the cost advantage anymore, and they start closing stores. Everything depends on interest rates being held down by the Fed. They can never, ever let them go up, rates.
Yeah, and the head of Walmart was saying that the weakness is all over the world, too. Not just here. Retail sales weak all over the world. So.
Yeah, McDonald's again today.
Yeah, McDonald's too. You're right.
Announced terrible sales, and they continue to do it. And if McDonald's doesn't have good sales, then who does?
And another article I read, Andy, if we weren't fracking, if we weren't producing energy the way that we're doing now, the country would really be in a major, major economic depression, far worse than it is now. We'd be several 100,000 jobs under where we are now, and we'd be producing several $100 billion a year less in output. Can't even imagine how bad the economy would be without the added energy production from the boom that we're seeing. And it's really kind of amazing to think.
And yet gasoline prices have been at their highest level ever in February, their highest level ever in January and in December. And it's almost $10 a gallon of gas in Europe right now.
Yeah.
That's because of inflation. And by the way, there's plenty of evidence out there that the fracking boom won't be a boom for much longer. But irrespective, the proof is at the pump.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Well, it's high cost energy that it does produce. We have no choice but to capitalize on it. If you enjoy walking into your house, flicking a switch and seeing the lights go on, or if you like pulling up to the gas pump and being able to fill up your car, then you better get used to fracking. But yeah, for sure, things are far worse. We started out saying that truth is the first casualty of government and probably the worst casualty, because if you don't know the truth, how can you possibly make any plans for the future, Andy?
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah. And, you and Bill Holter and so many of us out there, we wake up every morning with the intent of telling you the truth, but we're like shouted out 100 to 1 by the mainstream media and all these government mouthpieces telling you everything's fine, it's all going according to plan, don't worry about a thing, it's all okay, right? It's all good.
Well, I don't even think they're saying it's all going to plan, because there is no plan. The plan is simply to wake up each day and play defense. And the newest plan, for instance, is Obama saying, "Oh, we're going to raise the minimum wage," because he's just trying to get He's trying to get ready for the next election to get more votes. And Ukraine is here. How can we use this to make ourselves look good? And of course, they don't look good. But that's all they do, is on a daily basis try to figure out how to stay in office for one more day. I mean, I think everyone knows things are not going well.
Yep, it's the meme generator.
Yeah.
It's all about the meme generator. And hey, we've learned a thing or two about the meme generator as well. And we can do it just as well as them. But, the fact of the matter is, who was it? Late Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan, who said, you're entitled to your own argument, your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. And the facts don't speak well for the short-term and intermediate future. Boy, they're really coming in badly now, and they can interpret them the way they want. But the facts are that there's bad times ahead, and the money printing, it's whatever effectiveness it might have had, it's not looking good now.
Well, it never had effectiveness. It was just masked by the fact that we didn't have a lot of debt yet.
Yeah.
That's the equivalent of charging up your credit card. Now the card is charged up. So, any additional debt is just going to cause your rates to explode and your net worth to implode.
You got it. On that note, Andy, we'll talk with you next week. You be well.
You too.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.